AITAH for being mad at my husband for saying he would pick his deceased wife over me. I would pick her over you. Every single time. Those were the exact words that came out of my husband's mouth. And for a moment, I thought I hadn't heard him right. We were sitting in the living room, the TV humming softly in the background, when I had asked him a harmless, playful question that couples usually joke about. If you had to pick between me and anyone else in the world, who would it be? I expected a smile, maybe a dramatic answer like, "Of course you, silly." But instead, without even blinking, he said he would pick his deceased wife over me. The silence that followed after those words was so loud, I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. My chest tightened and my throat felt like it was closing up. I tried to laugh it off, hoping maybe he would quickly take it back, say it was just a slip of the tongue. But he didn't. He sat there, calm, almost too calm, like he had just told me the weather report. And in that moment, 1,000 questions raced through my head. Did he really just say that? Does he still see me as second place in his life? Am I only here because she's no longer alive? Before I could even gather my words to respond, he leaned back and sighed, as though his answer had been the most obvious thing in the world. My heart dropped. That was when I realized something I had tried so hard to avoid thinking about since the day we got married. But let me take you back so you can understand how we even got to this moment. I met my husband, Daniel, 3 years ago at a small coffee shop in town. I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. I had rushed in, late for work, planning to just grab a quick drink. He was standing in line ahead of me, wearing a dark gray suit that looked a little too formal for a coffee run. He turned around, smiled, and let me go ahead because he said I looked like I was about to explode from stress. I laughed, we talked briefly, and before I knew it, he was asking for my number. At first, everything with Daniel felt like a dream. He was kind, gentle, and attentive in ways I had never experienced in past relationships. He opened doors for me, remembered small details about my life, and called me every night just to say goodnight. But even in those early days, I noticed little shadows that lingered behind his smile. One evening, about a month into dating, we were walking by the river when he suddenly grew quiet. His eyes fixed on the water and his whole mood shifted. I asked him what was wrong, and after a long pause, he finally told me about her, his late wife, Claire. She had passed away in a car accident 2 years before we met. He described her as his everything, his first love, his best friend, the woman who knew him better than anyone else. His voice broke when he spoke about her, and I could see how deep the wound still was. I remember holding his hand tightly that night, assuring him that it was okay to grieve, that I wasn't here to replace her. He looked at me with grateful eyes, and from then on, we grew closer. Or at least, I thought we did. Our relationship moved fast. Within a year, he proposed. His family welcomed me warmly, though I noticed that whenever his late wife's name came up, the air would shift. People would grow quiet, almost reverent, as if speaking about a saint. At first, I understood. Grief is heavy, and she had been loved deeply by everyone. But over time, it started to feel like I was living in someone else's shadow. On our wedding day, while everyone cheered as I walked down the aisle, I caught Daniel's mother dabbing her eyes, whispering something about how Claire should have been here. My heart clenched, but I told myself to focus on the moment. I was the bride now. I was his wife. But the little signs never went away. In our home, he kept a framed picture of Claire in his office. I didn't mind at first, it was part of his past, but then I noticed he would sometimes sit at his desk, staring at the photo with a faraway look, as if reliving memories. On what would have been her birthday, he bought flowers and left them at her grave, spending the entire day there while I sat at home alone. When I asked him why he hadn't invited me, he said it was their thing. Still, I stayed, because I loved him, and I told myself that love meant patience, understanding, and giving space for grief. But that patience started to wear thin when I began to feel like no matter what I did, I would never truly be enough for him. Fast forward to last week. We had just finished dinner, laughing and joking about a silly TV show, when I playfully asked him that question, the kind of question couples toss around without thinking. If you had to pick between me and anyone else in the world, who would it be? I expected a smile, maybe a dramatic answer like, "Of course you, silly!" But instead, without even blinking, he said he would pick his deceased wife over me. The silence that followed after those words was so loud, I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. My chest tightened and my throat felt like it was closing up. I tried to laugh it off, hoping maybe he would quickly take it back, say it was just a slip of the tongue. But he didn't. He sat there, calm, almost too calm, like he had just told me the weather report. And in that moment, 1,000 questions raced through my head. Did he really just say that? Does he still see me as second place in his life? Am I only here because she's no longer alive? Before I could even gather my words to respond, he leaned back and sighed, as though his answer had been the most obvious thing in the world. My heart dropped. That was when I realized something I had tried so hard to avoid thinking about since the day we got married. The words hit me like a slap. You'll never be her. I sat there staring at him, trying to process. My husband, the man who vowed to love me, had just said out loud what I secretly feared since the day we met. I wanted to scream, to demand why he even married me if all he wanted was his dead wife. But my throat locked up. Instead, I pushed my chair back and went to the bedroom, my chest aching. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake listening to his calm breathing beside me, wondering how he could fall asleep so easily after saying something that shattered me. I stared at the ceiling until morning, asking myself the same question over and over. Am I just filling a gap in his life until he's reunited with her in death? The next day, I tried to act normal. I made breakfast, went about my chores, but I felt like a ghost in my own home. He kissed me on the forehead before leaving for work like nothing had happened. No apology, no second thought, just routine. By evening, I decided to bring it up again. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. When he came home, I asked him directly, "Do you regret marrying me?" He looked at me puzzled, like I was overreacting. No, he said simply, "I don't regret marrying you, but you asked me a question and I gave you the truth. Claire was my first love. Nothing will ever change that." Hearing that didn't comfort me at all. If anything, it felt worse. He said it so casually, so matter-of-fact, like I should accept that I'd always be number two. Later that week, we had dinner with his family. Things were going smoothly at first. Laughter, food, casual conversation. Then his sister brought up Claire. She started reminiscing, telling a story about how Claire once organized a surprise birthday party for Daniel. Everyone laughed and smiled, but all eyes turned to me, waiting to see how I'd react. I forced a smile, even though I felt invisible at that table. When we got home, I finally snapped. I told him how it hurt me, how I felt like no one, not even him, saw me as his real wife. He listened quietly, then sighed, like I was being difficult. "Claire was a part of my life for years. You knew what you were stepping into when you married me." I stood there, speechless. My hands trembled, my chest burning with anger and pain. He didn't even try to reassure me. And then, just as I was about to storm off, he looked dead in my eyes and said something that stopped me cold. "Honestly, sometimes I think I only married you because I couldn't have her anymore." The words echoed in my head like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. My knees felt weak, and for a moment, I thought I might actually collapse. I stared at him, waiting for some kind of correction, some softer words to follow, but none came. He just stood there, calm, as though he had told me the time of day. I walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. In the bedroom, I shut the door and pressed my face into a pillow, screaming until my throat was raw. I couldn't believe my husband had admitted out loud what I feared the most, that I was just a replacement. For the next few days, I avoided him. I went about the house in silence, answering only when necessary. He didn't chase me, didn't beg me to talk. It was like he had said his truth and now expected me to live with it. That hurt almost more than the words themselves. But then came a quieter moment. I was in the kitchen making tea when he came in, sat at the counter, and sighed. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded," he said. "You're important to me. I love you in my own way, but Claire was different." I stood frozen with the kettle in my hand. In his own way? What kind of love was that supposed to be? Still, a small part of me wanted to believe him, to believe that maybe he just didn't know how to express his feelings right. I nodded, pretending to accept it, but deep inside, doubt was eating me alive. The following weekend, his family held a small gathering at his mother's house. It was meant to be casual, just food and laughter, but as soon as we walked in, I noticed something that made my heart drop. In the living room, right above the fireplace, was a large framed photo of Claire in her wedding dress, smiling, glowing. Everyone admired it like it was a sacred relic. His mother even said, "She'll always be Daniel's true bride." I felt invisible, standing there with my hands clutching my dress so tightly my knuckles turned white. On the way home, I finally broke. Why do you let them treat me like I don't matter? Why do you let them act like I'm just standing in Claire's place? Daniel was quiet for a long time before answering. "Because, in a way, you are." I gasped. My heart pounded in my chest. "What is that supposed to mean?" I demanded, my voice shaking. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Cold, almost detached. And then he said, "If Claire hadn't died, I never would have met you. You know that, right? You're only here because she's not." Those words rang in my ears the entire ride home. I sat stiffly in the passenger seat, staring out the window, my hands clenched so tight they ached. My husband drove in silence, as though he hadn't just ripped my heart open. When we got home, I went straight to the bedroom and locked the door. He didn't even knock. He went to his office, closed the door, and stayed there until midnight. I lay in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. He kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work, told me to have a good day, as if the night before had been erased from his memory. I stood frozen in the kitchen, holding a coffee mug I never even sipped, thinking, is this really my life now? Living in the shadow of a dead woman? Later that day, I met up with my best friend. I hadn't planned to tell her everything, but the moment she asked, "Are you okay?" it all spilled out. Her face hardened as she listened. "That's not normal," she said firmly. "You can't keep living like this. You're his wife. He should be building a future with you, not clinging to the past." Hearing her say it gave me some relief, but it also scared me. Because deep down, I wasn't sure Daniel would ever let go of the past. That night, I tried to bring it up again. I asked him if he ever truly saw me as his partner, his equal, or if I was just there to fill a hole. He sighed, rubbed his temples, and muttered, "Why do you keep forcing me to choose? I loved her first. That doesn't mean I don't love you." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But the way he said it, weary, almost irritated, made it feel like my pain was just an inconvenience to him. I thought that was the worst of it. But then something happened that pushed me over the edge. 2 nights later, I walked past his office on my way to bed. The door was slightly open. I peeked in and froze. Daniel was sitting at his desk, the light from his laptop glowing on his face. He wasn't working. He was watching old home videos of him and Claire, laughing together, kissing, holding hands. His eyes were locked on the screen, glassy with tears. And then, clear as day, I heard him whisper, "I wish it had been you instead." I froze outside the door, my breath caught in my throat. My husband was whispering to a dead woman on a screen, wishing I had been the one to die instead of her. My hands trembled so badly I had to grab the wall to steady myself. In that moment, I wasn't just heartbroken, I was terrified. I quietly backed away, my chest heaving, and locked myself in the bedroom. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to wrap my head around what I had just heard. Did my husband really mean that? Did he really wish I had never been the one standing beside him, but her instead? The next morning, I couldn't look him in the eye. I barely spoke. He noticed, of course. "What's wrong with you now?" he asked, annoyed. I wanted to scream at him, to throw his words in his face, but instead I asked, "Do you ever regret marrying me?" He stared at me for a long time, then said, "Sometimes I do." That broke me. My knees gave out and I sat on the floor, sobbing. He didn't rush to hold me. He didn't apologize. He just stood there, silent, watching me unravel. The days that followed were a blur. I walked around the house like a stranger, avoiding him, avoiding everything. Tonya kept calling, urging me to come stay with her, telling me I didn't deserve this. And deep down, I knew she was right. But part of me was still clinging to the love I thought I had with Daniel. I remembered the man who had once made me laugh in a coffee shop, who had promised me a future, who had slipped a ring on my finger and sworn he loved me. Was that man gone? Or had he never existed at all? One night, I gathered the courage to confront him. I told him I had overheard what he said in his office, that I knew he wished it had been me instead. His face went pale. For a second, I thought he might deny it, but instead he just whispered, "You weren't supposed to hear that." That was all. No apology, no explanation, just confirmation. Something inside me snapped. I realized I couldn't keep living in the shadow of a dead woman. I couldn't keep being the placeholder for a love story that ended before I ever arrived. So I packed a bag. My hands shook the entire time, but I kept moving, shoving clothes into a suitcase. He walked into the bedroom, his eyes wide with shock. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice trembling but firm. I deserve to be loved fully. Not halfway, not as a replacement. Fully. For the first time since we married, I saw panic flicker across his face. He stepped forward, reaching for my hand. "Wait, please, don't go. I didn't mean it like that." But I pulled away. My heart was already too bruised, too broken to believe him anymore. And as I closed the door behind me that night, I knew this wasn't just about Claire or him or me. It was about finally choosing myself after being treated like second best for far too long. But even as I walked out, suitcase in hand, a single terrifying thought haunted me. What if he was only begging me to stay because he was afraid of being alone, not because he truly loved me? I've been staying with my best friend Tonya for the past few weeks. It hasn't been easy. I cry almost every night, but I also feel lighter than I felt in years. For the first time, I'm not walking on eggshells, not comparing myself to someone who isn't even alive anymore. Daniel has been calling and texting nonstop. At first, his messages were cold, accusing me of overreacting. Then they turned into desperate pleas. Please come home, I need you. You know I love you in my own way. But every word just reminded me of how little he valued me when I was there. I haven't gone back. I don't think I ever will. I realized I can't spend my life competing with a ghost, especially when the man I married openly admitted I was only there because she wasn't. That wound is too deep to ever heal. Right now, I'm focusing on rebuilding myself. Therapy, journaling, and reminding myself that I deserve to be chosen, not settled for. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that love should never make you feel invisible. And maybe one day, I'll find someone who looks at me the way Daniel still looks at her picture, like I'm their first and only choice. Until then, I'm choosing myself.